Hello everybody. So in the same way that I have been emphasizing and exploring the enormous importance of the fact that all language is overt, that there is no inner language. In the same way that I've been exploring all of that, and that I've said it over and over again, because you have to say it in order to be able to know it. You have to say it in order to be able to recognize it, to change your own neural behavior. And so in the same way as I have been doing that, I'm now going to emphasize, I'm now going to further elaborate on, you hear all this noise? I'm now going to elaborate on the fact that I have actually developed a science which I call languageology. Yeah. And languageology is the science of spoken language that nobody seems to know about except me, but I know about it because I am the N of one. Yeah, I am the single subject who investigates himself, and I have determined on my own, I have developed on my own, I have described all by myself, and yes, I have had some interaction with artificial intelligence which mirrored back to me what I have said, but I have all by myself created the science of spoken language, which is called languageology. And nobody wants to know about it, I know. There's no psychologist, no psychiatrist, no therapist. Nobody has really approached me and said, "Yeah, this is fantastic. We need this." No, and it's not because it's not because I don't want to write a book or I don't want to write a paper. It's not because I don't want to go the official route of doing what everybody else does. It's not because of that. I mean, my videos, they are out there. My X account is out there. Everybody can read it. There's access to it. People can take note of it. That there is indeed an enormous difference between talking in which you do not listen to yourself, which I call disembodied language, and talking in which you listen to yourself, which I call embodied language. So these two different ways of talking, they determine, very deterministic. There's nothing magic about this. If you do not listen to yourself while you speak, then you are going to deal with language in a particular way. And you will be dealing with language in an entirely different way if you listen to yourself while you speak, if you have embodied language. So if you do not listen to yourself, if you have disembodied language, and if you keep listening to other people, or you keep making other people listen to you, you're not listening to yourself. Well, because you do not listen to yourself, you are going to have this weird fantasy about inner language. Inner language which does not exist. You may believe that you have a mind, but there is no such thing as a mind. There is no such thing as inner language. And you keep being bothered by your mind, because your mind means nothing but trouble. Your mind creates a complication which is totally unnecessary. Yeah, the idea that there is language inside of you is inherent conflict between the language that is overt, the language that you speak and that you can hear and that you can read, and because it is written. There's a conflict between overt and covert language, but such a conflict does not exist because it's all imaginary. So the conflict between your subjective experience and the objective reality is all imaginary. And you can only solve that conflict. There is no conflict. You can only acknowledge that there is no conflict with your overt language, with your embodied language. So as long as you believe in an internal dialogue with yourself, you're screwed. And you're troubled, you are conflicted, you are using your language incorrectly. And if you begin to listen to yourself and realize there is no inner language, then you say, wow, this is so important. This science of language, this languageology is incredible. Languageology, it shows us that we as individuals have a language that fits with our experience. And so you express your individually lived experience with your embodied language, and you experience, as a consequence of that, as a consequence of your correct use of language, because you listen to yourself. The speaker is the listener. You listen to yourself, you speak with yourself, and you realize, like, wow, this issue of disembodied language was always putting the authority into somebody else but you. So you were never in charge of your own life with your disembodied language. And with embodied language, you are free. You are in charge of your own life. And you're not only saying it, you are hearing it and you are acting on it. So you are connecting your whole way of life with your embodied language, and all your other behavior is going to match with your embodied language. And that is just so delightful. Good morning. And it is such a big difference from your disembodied language, which was always maintaining and stimulating behaviors which you didn't want. And you didn't even know that you didn't want these behaviors. You didn't even know that you didn't want disembodied language. Once you have embodied language, you realize, like, wow, I didn't want disembodied language. I never wanted it. And yes, I secretively or unknowingly always wanted to have embodied language. That is the science of spoken language, languageology. And now, this science is revealed to you because you, as a single subject, as an N of one, have decided that this is something that I need to know more about, because if I do not know about this particular science, my life is going to remain a mess. Psychology doesn't help me with this. Philosophy doesn't help me with this. Prayer or religion or whatever you call it spirituality doesn't help you with this. No, it cannot. Because other things, fantasy, superstitions, are presumably more important than this. But here, you are just talking with yourself, you are listening to yourself, and you're beginning to make sense of your own experience. And it couldn't become clear in any other way than the way in which, good morning, than the way in which I describe it, because language has a particular working, just like things do not fall upward, in the same way language has a particular working. In France, which is a country in Europe, people speak French, and people that are born in France most likely learn to speak French. However, if you're born in Sweden, you're in a different area, in a different environment, and yes, then you acquire the Swedish language. And so it is environment which affects the individual, the human being who learns a language. It is environment which sets the stage for the kind of behavior, verbal behavior that we over time learn. And so your ability, in the same way, to speak, if you speak a second language, to speak a second language, similarly, is also determined by the fact that you have studied this other language, you've read books, you've listened to it, you've spoken it. Ideally, you have immersed yourself in it, in this other language, so that you can really become more fluent in this other language, like I did. I come from the Netherlands, and I speak English because I am an American now. I have been an American for quite some time, but already in the Netherlands I was pretty fluent in my English. But what I'm saying here is that if you want to acquire a new language, it is similar to acquiring embodied language instead of disembodied language. We call that a contingency. The contingency for embodied language obviously is different from the contingency of disembodied language. The circumstance in which embodied language occurs is different than the circumstance in which disembodied language occurs. And you will have to acknowledge that difference. And the only way in which you're going to do that is if you talk with yourself, and if you let yourself know, like, oh wow, now I'm just here. Look, this is where I am. I am riding my bicycle on this cold morning, misty or cloudy, and but I feel pretty warm because I'm dressed with a lot of clothes, and I am here. I feel comfortable. I feel nice. I am riding my bicycle here, and so that's a contingency. There's nothing bothering me. I feel happy riding my bicycle. I feel happy making another recording. I'm not trying to convince anybody of anything. I'm not trying to teach anything to anybody. No, I'm just simply speaking with myself about the fact that yes, it may be so that people are not interested in languageology, or they are not talking about it, but it is already a science, and it is already as important, if not more important, than physics or biology or chemistry. This is a real science which, of course, should be verified, should be, you could say, articulated by many people, But in the same way as physics is not known to everybody, Yeah, or chemistry. You can get by in life without chemistry, or you can get by in life without knowing much about physics. You cannot get by without languageology. And you may say you can, of course, you can continue to deny that you should know about it, or that it is important for you to know about it. Of course it is important for you to know how you use your language. Yeah, I mean, how can you deny that? But people, they are in denial and they believe in all kinds of nonsense. Yeah, all sorts of superstitions, religious, political, ideological, philosophical. And once you have embodied language, you cannot go on having these superstitions, whether it is... It doesn't matter which superstition you have. So all your superstitions are out of the door once you begin to speak with yourself and listen to yourself. Yeah, that's what science is. Science is not based on your belief. No. and also the science of one is not based on your belief of one, because you can still say, oh, I want to believe that. It's just my belief. No. Your belief is just nonsense. Because your belief is not the reality. And how your language works is not a belief, okay? So, once you begin to talk with yourself, and once you begin to say all this to yourself, you realize, like, wow, it is really true. Yeah, this is really a science. And even though this is, as of yet, unknown and unheard of, and you could say not recognized, that doesn't mean that it isn't real. That doesn't mean that it isn't important. That doesn't mean that you should feel discouraged to find out about it. As a matter of fact, it makes it even more important, because I am having embodied language. Good morning. And I have the consequences of my ongoing embodied language. These positive consequences are making my life really good. Yeah, I am a happy person, a satisfied person, an accomplished person. And I express with my ongoing embodied language my language enlightenment. So you are missing out on, what is language enlightenment? That is, of course, the correct use of your language, basically, yeah? The correct use of your language, which describes your experience and which addresses everything what is important to you, yeah? And also what acknowledges that certain things, they are there, they're keeping many people busy. Many people are enthralled with all kinds of things, and you stay away from that. You find all of that unimportant. You have decided that no, I don't want to be involved in that, because it is of no business for me to be busy with that. Yeah. So there is a lot that you will discover with your own science of languageology, which will tell you what is important to you, what you need, your needs, and you will fulfill these needs. And if you need to fulfill them again, you will fulfill them again. Yeah, you will do everything to keep yourself happy and to keep yourself stimulated and to keep yourself in check, in the sense that you won't do anything that is harming yourself or that is hurting yourself or that's troubling yourself. Do you get what I'm saying? This is what you do because you've said it to yourself, because you have understood yourself, because you have truly acknowledged what it is that you need and what it is that you do not need, what you need to be without, and what you also need to stop being involved in, because you have all kinds of habits that you need to get rid of if you want to be happy, if you want to continue with your embodied language. There's just no ifs and buts about it. When you begin to have embodied language, you discover that you're involved in all sorts of things, not only just this embodied language, but you're involved in all sorts of activities which you actually don't even want to be involved in. And yet, day in, day out, you are involved in it. Look how pretty this is. It's so nice once it has rained. This canal, it always fills up. And I always like to ride my bicycle here. And so, doing what you want and saying what you want, they go together. But you cannot be doing what you want if you are not saying what you want. And if what you're saying is not what you want, and you do not even hear yourself saying something that you do not want, if you say, I want this, but you do not hear your own demandingness, you do not hear your own anxiety, that, oh, I need that, without that, I cannot live. Yeah, your stress, your fear of not having what you want, yeah. If you do not hear all that, when you express what you want, there's no fear. When you express what you want, you're going to have what you want. But as long as you express your fear of not having what you want, you're not going to get what you want. And as long as you express your stress and your worry and your frustration about not having what you want, you are not going to have what you want. So, you need to listen to yourself, you need to talk with yourself, you need to tell yourself, like, okay, what I want is not something frustrating. No. What I want is not something, anxiety provoking. No. What I want is not something that makes me feel in any way bad about stuff. No. What I want is something good, something wholesome. And that is who I am. That is what fits with my being, with who I feel good about. Yeah? And so you hear that in your sound. And unless you have had the embodied language in which you express that, you are just not going to have what you want. And whatever it is that you acquire, whatever it is that you have, whatever it is that you achieve, yeah, you may have suffered a big time because of that, and you may have really worked hard to accomplish whatever it is. It doesn't satisfy you, it doesn't complete you, it doesn't mean anything real to you, because at the end of the day, you don't really want it. I have had to go through that to be able to have my embodied language. And of course, if you put this more into a scientific framework, yeah, in a scientific framework, it would perhaps be a little bit more like this. Yeah, you are observing something. Yeah, in science, observation, yeah, pattern recognition, you observe certain data, yeah, you describe something that's going on, a particular process, you describe your own behavior, yeah, you describe what you perceive, yeah, observation, that's one of the beginnings of the scientific process, yeah, you observe, but the observation is of course a reference to visual stimuli. You're seeing something, you're observing something, yeah? Let's say, for instance, you put a rat in a cage and this rat is pressing the lever. You're observing if this rat is pressing that lever, and if it gets closer to this lever or not. Yeah. You're observing. But when we are dealing with language, when you are dealing with your own language, you are observing by listening. So in dealing with your own language, in exploring your own language, in observing your own language, you are listening to yourself. Yes. And so this self-listening is the observation that is the start of your scientific process of languageology, in which you begin to describe to yourself, wow, when I listen to myself, everything is different from when I do not listen to myself. When I listen to myself, I hear in the sound of my voice as I speak that this is what I'm saying, this is what I'm experiencing, this is what I am at this moment paying attention to. And it is interesting how your language brings you into the here and now, because you have listened to yourself. Yeah, you are listening to yourself. And so now you begin to listen. Yeah, listening is being in the here and now. And it's also, of course, speaking in the here and now. So speaking and listening happen simultaneously in the here and now. Yeah, all of this is science. Yeah. If there is no listening, only speaking, you're not having embodied language. If there's only speaking, no listening, that's disembodied language. Yeah? We disconnect from our speaking in disembodied language. And we do that because we want others to listen. But we're not listening ourselves. Yeah? We do that because we must listen to others, or we believe that it is important that we should listen to others, but we're not listening to ourselves. Yeah? So the science is in the beginning about observation, but then we say, okay, with verbal behavior it's about listening, so it's observing by listening, you could say. And then we begin to describe, we begin to express. And then if you're listening, you're able to express things which you are not able to express, you're not able to articulate, you are not, it doesn't even even come to your awareness, as we say. But no, you don't have access to your verbal repertoire as long as you are somewhat fearful because you need to please others, you need to talk to them, and and you want them to agree with you, you want them to acknowledge you, you want them to accept you. There's all these reasons why you're not listening. And so as long as you're not listening, you cannot say what you want to say, what you are capable of saying, but you can't say it because your attention is drawn outwardly to others. Yeah. And you need that attention for yourself to be able to say what you want to say, what you're capable of saying. So when you keep listening to yourself while you speak and have embodied language, you begin to be able to say things which you were never able to say to others. Yeah, in disembodied language, you were never able to say it. And you hear yourself again and again and again saying new things. Things that you have never said before, that you couldn't say before, but which now you can say because you have described for yourself the contingency in which embodied language happens, and you have also described and acknowledged the contingency in which disembodied language happens. And yes, your descriptions are clear, and You have therefore created a scientific space, yeah, a reasonable, logically coherent space in which you now have stopped your disembodied language and in which you now have embodied language with which you keep going, keep expressing the new. And so this is not an instant of newness. This is not a moment of newness. This is a continuity of newness. And you are expressing that with your embodied language. Every time you have embodied language, you experience that continuity. Yeah? Yeah. And even if you may experience it only for a little while, because that is how it is in the beginning, because you're still working on it, you're still counteracting your previous conditioning history. So you only get to have a few moments of it and then it is gone again. Good morning. Then you have to acknowledge for yourself, oh my God, I have again fallen back into my old habit of not listening to myself. Okay, no big deal. You can acknowledge that and say that again to yourself. And then you are back again in the continuity of embodied language and you feel that newness again. Yeah? And yeah, that is your language enlightenment right there. Even if you have only a short while of it, it is already there. Yeah? That's your natural state of being, of using your language correctly in embodied language when you listen to yourself while you speak. And yes, this way in which you listen to yourself while you speak, of course you can talk like this with others. If these other people are also like you, scientific, if they also listen to themselves while they speak. Yeah. And science only makes sense to those people who are themselves scientific. Doesn't that make sense to you? Well, maybe you should take a couple of college classes then, learn something about science, because that's what science is all about. Science is about agreement. And the disagreements that people have in science, they're all actually hidden in our usual way of talking. Yeah? Once we have embodied language as scientists, which we don't, yeah, this is a very interesting topic, by the way. Yeah, I mean, you would assume that scientists, that they would have embodied language, but they don't, absolutely not. No, they're endlessly arguing about who's right, and the whole edifice of science becomes, I don't know, some sort of a argument about who's right and who's wrong. When, in fact, when we have embodied language, it's not about who is right, because everybody is right in embodied language. Yeah? Everybody is right with regard to their own experience. And so the whole argument, it falls flat. The whole disagreement, it disappears. The whole conflict of, I don't know, the known versus the unknown, it all just dissolves. And yeah, we can give all kind of fancy words to it, or the known, the unknown, the unknowable. It is just more of the same disembodied language. So when we as scientists acquire the embodied language, you hear these fucking leaf blowers everywhere. I just hate these leaf blowers. They are everywhere and they just tear up the morning. And what are they doing? They're just blowing leaves in areas where, yeah, there's a park like this. You know, it is just so annoying. They shouldn't be doing this, but okay. And I'm annoyed. Okay, I admit it. It just totally pisses me off that there's always this noise everywhere. There's really no need for people to do this in a park like this. Leave us alone. I'm moving away from that noise. Anyway. Oh, much better, huh? Yeah. See? This is how I live. I hear the sound, it annoys the hell out of me, and I just move away. That's how it is. And this is how I am back again with my embodied language. Did you hear that? Yeah. So as I was saying, yeah, scientifically, it's of humongous importance that we have embodied language. I'm gonna walk for a little bit here, because just consider for a second, yeah? I mean, in science, everything is about written language. Why? Because we don't have scientific spoken language, yeah? So, in written language, therefore, we inadvertently continue our disembodied language. And it's only in our spoken language that we can finally begin to stop our disembodied language and recognize that embodied language in spoken form is needed to have, yeah, you could say scientific progress. Yeah. And this is where we begin to agree on what we know and on what we don't know, because of course there's stuff that we know and there's stuff that we don't know. And we can all just agree on that. There doesn't need to be any argument about that. Why should there be any argument about that? There's a lot of things I don't know about. And I don't have any problem admitting that. And so, if you don't, yeah, the car mechanic repairs my car, you know, I don't have a problem with that. Or somebody else bakes the bread that I'm eating. I don't bake my own bread. I'm glad these people bake the bread. Or the dentist does my, yeah, if I have a cavity. Yeah. Now, so I do not need to know about these things. And so, but scientists of all people, they ought to know about embodied language, and they don't. Isn't that ironic? And even psychologists, of course, or psychiatrists or therapists, they don't know about embodied language. They don't want to know. I've been part of psychology for a big part of my life. I've worked in mental health for many, many years. I've studied psychology, I've studied behaviorism, and there's nobody really interested in this. There's nobody interested in the science of spoken language, which has been discovered and described by me. Yeah. So, morning. So as I was saying, there are these different steps in the scientific process. Yeah, there is description, or there's observation with listening. There's description, you just tell yourself what you experience, what you want to pay attention to, what you find important. Yeah, it's all about you. You just talk about whatever you want to talk about with yourself. Nobody tells you what to talk about. You tell yourself what you want to talk about. Okay, so you do that. You describe your own individually lived experience. Okay, you do that. And then you begin to predict. Yeah? You begin to say, like, if I listen to myself while I speak, then what? If I listen to myself while I speak, then I hear my voice. Yeah? And I am conscious. And I realize that I have what I want. And I also understand that there's things I don't want, and I need to stay away from that. And I will do that. And I'm totally fine with that. And if I do that, yeah, let's say I have done that. Of course I've done that. So I've done that. I have stayed away. And I have continued with my embodied language. And I have acted on what I said to myself. Well, then what? Well, here it is. Then I am happy. Then I am happy. Then I am satisfied. Then I am understanding. then I am full of energy, then I feel rich without without the burden of, I don't know, without the burden that everybody is having with all their so-called riches. Yeah, because I have acquired my embodied language. I have acquired real self-knowledge. Yeah. Scientific self-knowledge. Yeah. Scientific self-knowledge, which is of course in accordance with other scientific knowledge. Yeah. I am just also as a human being. Yeah. My body is not invincible, or is not is not immortal. No, I'm bound by the laws of physics, right? Just like everybody else. And and so I am completely adjusted with my language to the reality which has not been produced by my language. No, the language which was describing my reality correctly. So I've adjusted my language to the reality that already existed, that always actually existed, even though I couldn't describe it with my disembodied language. Yeah? So if I listen to myself, if you listen to yourself, you are not going to have the problems that you keep having when you do listen to yourself, when you don't listen to yourself. Yeah, of course. Yeah. So you feel incredible relief when that happens. Yeah. You feel enormous relief because not having the problems that you were having when you were not listening to yourself is also something so peculiar, because most of these problems that you were having were just imaginary, just like your inner language was imaginary. So your problems are all just imaginary. You imagine to have problems, and that is why you believe to have problems. But when you have embodied language, you realize that none of that is true. So if you begin to listen to yourself, then you predict, because you have now got a little bit of experience with embodied language. So based on your previous experience, if you have more embodied language, things just keep getting better. Yeah. And that's how my life is. Yeah. Isn't it nice here? I love riding my bicycle here. I go on this little trail through the forest here. So now you predict. So do you follow the steps, the scientific steps? Yeah, you observe, and you observe by listening, you describe, you tell yourself, and then you predict. Yeah, you say, if I listen to myself then, or if I don't listen to myself, oh my God, all hell breaks loose. Yeah, because you may have listened to yourself a little bit, but then again, you're back on square one again. You are again falling back into your old pattern. Okay, you were not listening to yourself. No, you wanted other people to listen to you. And yes, you were again endlessly carried away by what other people were saying. You were not listening to yourself. You were not speaking with yourself. Oh, so you were not listening to yourself because you were not speaking with yourself. Aha. And yes, you may have spoken with yourself, but no, you need to speak with yourself in a very specific way, because you only listen to yourself if you speak with yourself in such a way that you like to hear what you say. So you gotta speak with yourself in such a way that you like to hear it. Aha. So if you do that, if you continue with that, then your embodied language will begin to prolong itself, because you now extend the contingency. You you begin to actually realize like you are neurally behaving that contingency. Yeah. Because the environment in which you experience embodied language is of course created by your own neural behavior. It is recognized, it is described by, it is observed, it is listened to by your own neural behavior. Yeah? So everything inheres in your body. And you are changing your body. You are reconditioning your body. You were conditioned with disembodied language. You stop the disembodied language. Yeah? That is deconditioning yourself. You stop your disembodied language and then you're reconditioning yourself by having embodied language. And that means a neural restructuring of your body. Yeah. And then you realize like, wow, so now in this process of reconditioning, there is going to be you could say a semi-permanent change. Good morning. And this change, it can actually begin to occur because you have exactly done what it takes to predict the outcome that you want. Yeah? If what you have predicted does not produce the outcome that you had said was going to happen, something went wrong. And so, it's very important to recognize that when you have, let's say, disembodied language, you make all sorts of claims, and these claims, you can make them and you can keep pounding your chest and say like, okay, this is how it is, or this is how it has to be. Yeah. And okay, you can keep saying that and repeating that, and that's what people do to convince themselves that it is true. But when you listen to yourself, you realize like, wait a second, I'm just repeating these things, but they are not true. And I'm only repeating what isn't true. What is true is not something that I repeat, that needs repeating. Isn't it interesting? Yeah? So the new is always new. Yeah, that sounds really weird, but it makes sense, right? Yeah. And so when you express your own aliveness, when you express your own state of well-being, you can never express how you felt, and you can also not express how you're going to feel, because all of that is either your past or your future. But no, it is about how it is now. And how it is now is never how it was, is never how it will be. It is a whole different expression. And so your prediction about being alive, about being yourself, about feeling that your life is meaningful, experiencing that and expressing that. Your prediction about your embodied language working for you, because that's another thing that you consider like your correct way of using language. Of course, it works for you, and if it is true that your language works for you, then you should be experiencing certain outcomes. You cannot be unhappy, you cannot be dissatisfied, you cannot be tormented, you cannot be endlessly stressed and anxious and frustrated. So, if you are using your language correctly and you do actually listen to yourself while you speak, then all these outcomes predictably begin to manifest in your life. Yes, and they do. They do. If you do what you need to do, yeah. And I am doing that, and so I have developed this science, and my life is the proof. You can believe me or not, I don't care. I live my life the way I do, and I know what I am experiencing. Yeah. I don't need to convince you of my truth. I don't need to convince you of my happiness and of my satisfaction. No. I have what I have because of my knowledge about languageology. Yeah. And so without that, I would never be able to have what I have. And I wasn't able to have, there was a time when I didn't know as much about languageology as I know today. And in those years, I wasn't having what I'm having today. So again, back again to the prediction. Yeah, there is a prediction you make based on your previous experience with embodied language as well as with disembodied language. Based on your previous experience with disembodied language, you can say like, okay, based on my previous experience with disembodied language, I can predict that if I stop listening to myself, if I again get carried away by listening to others or by trying to get other people to listen to me, well, then I am creating conflicts for myself. Then I'm creating stress for myself. Then I'm creating difficult situations for myself. And yes, I've done that. I've been there. I've done that. But I'm no longer doing that. I've learned. Yeah, I've deconditioned myself. I've stopped behaving that way. All of that is part of my languageology. Yeah. So there's prediction with regard to your disembodied language as well as prediction with regard to your disembodied language. Of course, the prediction with your disembodied language becomes less and less important, and the prediction with your embodied language becomes more and more important because you're just getting better and better at it. And this exponential development of your embodied language is something in and of itself so beautiful. You will go through periods where you do not even realize how fast you have been changing, how fast everything has improved, how fast you have moved out of all sorts of trouble that before seemed like an endless dreadful cycle of misery, yeah. And now the circle is broken, or whatever, you stepped out of the wheel, whatever you want to call it. You're no longer bound by this karma. Yeah, that's what people say. Yeah. You are describing things correctly with your embodied language, and that's why you are no longer trapped in any habit, in any situation, in any kind of... No, you just keep moving and you keep being happy. You keep achieving your own potential. And as you become more familiar with your own intelligence, because this is also, the correct use of your language implies using your intelligence, you just feel proud of yourself that you are doing all this and that it is real. This is not something you just tell yourself, oh yeah, I've done that, oh look how good I know. No, or you're not putting up a show for yourself. No. As I'm making here this video, I've been talking for some time now, and I'm riding my bicycle here on this path here. I gotta keep my eye on the path while I'm riding here. But I just enjoy making this video, and I'm able to give it all to you, this scientific explanation. Yeah. So I've just covered the issue of prediction, right? So we covered observation, by listening, listening to yourself while you speak. You observe what you say, you observe what you pay attention to, you describe the whole process, you listen to yourself, you describe it correctly, the accurate description, and then you begin to predict with the accurate description. And yes, these predictions, they can be truthful, and then you have good morning. With these truthful predictions, or with these accurate predictions, you have shown to yourself that you can use your language correctly, and your embodied language predicts these positive outcomes, and they do reliably, good morning, they do reliably occur, and you are the witness of that. You are the recipient of that. You are experiencing these beneficial outcomes, these desirable outcomes. So, so the prediction, of course, is followed by control, or what they call, verification. Is it true? If I listen to myself, then all these things happen. Then I seem to have gained a sense of control, which I didn't have before with my disembodied language. And so control is the ultimate goal of science, that we can actually control our environment. And the control that one acquires with embodied language is a very peculiar kind of control, because it kind of moves away from our old notion of control, which is based on a sense of coercion, a sense of forcefulness, a sense of inconsiderateness about our own needs, about our own behavioral variability, I should say, because there's also, of course, the different times that we need something else, and there's also conflicting needs that we have, which need to be sorted out, where we realize, like, wow, needs that I have, which are conflicting with other needs that I have, are always describing conflicting contingencies, have nothing to do with the feelings that I'm having, have to do with the fact that under certain circumstances I am having those needs, and under other circumstances I have other needs. So this is, again, something to be further explored and to be further described by anyone who is going to, anyone that's going to learn about on their own, learn about the language that is the language of freedom, the language of your freedom to just do what you want, do what you need, do what is good for you, and stop doing what you don't want, stop doing what's not good for you, stop doing what is forced on you. So there's a lot of ground to be covered for anyone who is going to embark on that process of learning about languageology. It is ultimately all about acquiring self-knowledge, and it all goes back to a lot of the things that have been said by many people down the ages. It has been said by famous philosophers that an unobserved world is not worth living, or something like that. you need to know yourself, know thyself, all that kind of stuff. But why do we even have that problem, if you will, this problem that we need to know ourselves, that we do not know ourselves, and that therefore we have a need to know ourselves? Well, once you begin to have embodied language, you realize why you need to know yourself. Oh, you need it so badly. Yeah. Why? Why is that such a dire need? Well, because you're not listening to yourself in disembodied language, and that's how you were conditioned. Okay. So once you begin to give yourself permission to listen to yourself, talk with yourself in such a way that you listen, yeah, you realize like, wow. So this need to know yourself is actually another artifact of our disembodied language. Yeah, indeed. And then self-control is not, or self-control, behavioral control of your life, how you want to live. It just happens totally by itself. You don't do anything to control your life. You naturally veer towards embodied language. You hear that noise? I'm now going to ride my bicycle underneath the freeway, and so there's a lot of noise from the freeway there. Yeah, okay. But in spite of all the noise that we hear everywhere, there is no problem. I saw there a couple of homeless people there. They were defecating underneath the bridge. Disgusting. Absolutely disgusting. All these homeless people everywhere. Yeah. Well, I want to say that if we're going to have embodied language, these kind of problems will be dealt with also very differently. And I may talk about it some other time, but of course, the whole of psychology will change when we have embodied language. And yeah, the whole of governing will change when we have embodied language. And so I would say, in conclusion to today's video, that yes, you can get by not knowing about the sciences, yeah, and most people can even get by most people can get by being unscientific, because they have all kinds of religious beliefs and all kind of cultural superstitions, and they can still get by. But once you begin to acknowledge the difference between when you listen to yourself while you speak and when you don't listen to yourself while you speak, there's no more beating around the bush. You cannot get by without embodied language. You do not get by without embodied language. You are in trouble with disembodied language. You've always been in trouble. You never knew it. You never said it. You never acknowledged it. But with embodied language, you're gonna wake up to the reality. Yeah, that's what languageology is all about.